morning. November 21st meeting of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaley. Fritz. Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Colleagues, I've pulled items. There's just a few housekeeping items for people who might be here for these. I just want to let you know right up front. I've pulled items 1190 and 1191 off the consent agenda as they are new appointments. Today, we'll hear item 1190. That's the appointment of Brian McCarter to the Portland Design Commission. It's my understanding he will be here, or he is here. I am moving item 1191. That's the appointment of Andrew Smith to the Portland Historic Landmarks Commission to next week when Mr. Smith will be able to attend the council session. Additionally, I am moving the second reading of 1196. That's regarding single-use plastics. I'd like to move that to next week based on the hearing last week at council and feedback from some of the stakeholders and bureau staff since that time. It's been signaled to me that there's some more work that needs to be done on that. I'm working on a specific amendment to address some of the feedback we've gotten regarding plastic straws in particular, so I'd like to hold off on that until next week. Any substantive amendments that are introduced during the second reading next week will, of course, receive oral testimony at that time. So that's just the housekeeping items for today. And with that, I'll turn it over to the attorney. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of the testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for their trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you very much. First up, communications.
Item 1185, a request of Lightning Super Creativity XX1 PDX to address council regarding Oak Leaf Mobile Home Park tenants relocation costs.
Good morning.
Good morning. A little bit busy. Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity. The main thing I want to make sure is that on these relocation fees on the Oak Leaf Mobile Home Park, that everybody receives those relocation fees. You had a council meeting on 16, and we had this room filled. And those people, the tenants, deserve to get those fees, and I'm going to monitor that. I want other people to take a look at that also and follow up on that to make sure they got those fees. Now, moving on, again, Colorado, as you know, voted to end slavery for all people in the state of Colorado. This was a big deal that happened by looking at Amendment A and changing some language in that. And again, what they did is one of the first states to ever do this, and I'm hoping Mayor Ted Wheeler will follow their path on this. I want everyone to review this video, and we'll go from there. Sir? Okay, thank you.
Did you know that slavery is still legal in the state of Colorado? Surprising, right? It's 2018, and slavery is still in our Colorado Constitution. That's why we're fighting to pass Amendment A this November. Article 2, Section 26 currently states, "There shall never be in this state either slavery or involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime." Amendment A changes it to say, "There shall never be in this state either slavery or involuntary servitude, period." We Coloradans could be the first state in our nation to remove this deeply offensive language from our Constitution. We tried in 2016 to abolish slavery, and it failed by less than 1%. The language was confusing. People who wanted to abolish slavery unknowingly voted to keep it in the Constitution. This time, it's clear that a yes vote abolishes slavery. Slavery is not the Colorado value. That's why 100% of the Colorado legislature voted twice to place this measure on the ballot. Even our elected officials, who often find it difficult to agree on this. It's time to remove slavery from our state constitution. Amendment A abolishes slavery. Vote yes on Amendment A this November.
It's a good answer.
Congratulations, Colorado. Congratulations. Absolutely great work. There shall never be in this state either slavery or involuntary servitude. Period. Period. You, Mayor Wheeler, have the potential to push this forward for the state of Oregon. I wish you luck. Thank you very
sir.
much.
Appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
1186, request of Joe Walsh to address council regarding communication.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice, and we take no money from the city council, and we ask that everybody that testifies before you make the same statement or disclose how much money they do take, because that is the bias. So, we are here today to just recommend some things in a positive way and not in a negative way, because we get accused sometimes of just throwing rocks all the time, and we don't. We suggest things, but they're ignored, so we're just gonna list them. First one, withdraw from the JTTF immediately. 2, once a month, move the city council meeting into one of the 95 neighborhoods. I think it's 95, is it? 95? Okay, move it into one of those once a month. Joanne and I agree on this, and I hope when she gets on the council, it's something that she pushes. Clean up the lead problem in our water system and stop denying that it's a violation of the standards. 4, have same-day sign-up for communications and expand it to 10 instead of 5. Set up a standing committee to look at the police response to protests. This committee should have members from the ACLU, the Lawyers Guild, and 3 other members that they decide on, not you. There should be equal amount of police on the committee. Create a truly independent group who would look at the alleged misconduct of the police. Members of this group would be recommended by the committee in number 5. So you would have the ACLU and the cops. They would recommend who looks at the reports and figures out what happened. If there is an issue that must be talked about on the day of this meeting, there would be time allowed for that. We have a problem. You refuse to do anything about 4 weeks, 6 weeks to get to talk to you. So we can't do anything current. So if we have a major problem on the street, we can't come and talk to you. So make some time at the end of the session or sit around, talk to us about it. Good relations. If we spend the time and we take buses and we come all the time to visit you, you should take the time. We just had another protest, and it went badly. The protesters felt like the cops were against them, not the racists, not the terrorist organization, but again, against the citizens of Portland that come out and protest. So, don't tell me that we don't recommend things, because we do.
Thank you.
And we're on record now. Some of these are really
Thank you.
easy to do. And you would be
Thank you.
popular, and you wouldn't be mumbling, going
Thank
home.
you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Appreciate
When you
your
do a
testimony.
speech, you wouldn't be mumbling.
Mr. Walsh, your time is up.
Oh,
Mr. Walsh, your time is up. Thank you.
yes.
Next individual, please.
Item 1187, request of Norm Duffett to address council regarding homelessness in Northwest Portland.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Norman Duffett. I live on Northwest Pettygrove, across from Wallace Park, which is the home of Chapman Elementary School. In the last several months, we've gone from having 1 or 2 homeless people camping in the park to where we have a regular encampment of 4 to 6, sometimes 8. Sleeping in the park. My request today is a simple one. One other point. That encampment's 150 feet. I measured it from where the elementary school kids play every school day. And my request, and I have called the police a number of times and asked that they come out. And their request, or their response is, yes, we'll come out, but we can only ask them to move along. I'm in that park every night and every morning with my dog. After I make the request, as I did last night, they're still there in the morning. Nothing changes. So my request is a simple one. My understanding is there's a city ordinance against camping in parks, public parks. And I just ask that the council ask the police to enforce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duffett. We appreciate your being here.
Item 1188, request of injured and pissed off to address council regarding wanted honest attorney and DOJ.gov.
By the way, Mr. Duffett, while injured is coming up, one of the first things I did when I took office was I issued a statement to the police bureau asking them to enforce the restrictions on rigid structures in parks and public right-of-ways. So that is on the record as my desire. I appreciate your sharing that story. Thank you.
My name's Injured and Pissed Off, and I talked here October 31st, and today, of course, is the 21st of November. That was Trick or Treat. And of course, I addressed an uninvited guest publication that was printed in Willamette Week, August 9th of 2006. They've had a rule here that you're not supposed to talk publicly since then of 30 days. Well, I went down there after talking to Trick or Treat here and told them that I'd talked here, and I guess they had forgot it. And again, I also must be getting ESP, but I talked November 1st at the Multnomah County Board meeting, the AM session, and told him that I'd had talked here Trick or Treat, and at that time, if you remember, I had said that you deleted the name Ed Tabor. Well, if somebody reads the minutes from the Multnomah County Board meeting of November 1st, apparently you deleted the name Ed Tabor again. I'm beginning to think that the city council, the city auditor, or the city attorneys, or you yourself, Mr. Mayor, have something against Ed Tabor. As I've explained, he is a polygraph examiner now, and he was a former Pendleton police officer, chief of police, in fact, twice. And I had run-ins with him about my service animal, and he was contacted by the Department of Justice, and he was explained the law. And ever since that time, well, I'd called him up some 2 weeks after. He explained that I could be arrested traveling with my service animal in stores. The United States Department of Justice said that they were going to straighten them out, and I guess they did, because I called him up 2 weeks later and he said everything was just fine. I could take the dog in stores. But my service animal had been attacked 7 times here, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. I pointed that out to you with the service animal laws, Mr. Wheeler. After 5 dog attacks, and you wrote a letter January 16th, and of course I had 2 more since then, and OHSU was telling me my operation of November 16th of 2010, that it would be, after I explained with 7 dog attacks, that they just said that it would be catch-22. Well, it is catch-22 till the city gets sued with an honest attorney.
All right, thank you.
Item 1189, request of Bob Schatz to address council regarding homeless camps.
Welcome, thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is Bob Schatz. My wife and I bought a home in Southeast Portland 28 years ago, which we raised our children in, and they went to the same elementary school that my wife went to. So we're long-term residents of Portland. And about 5 years ago, we started contacting City Council because the homeless people were all over our neighborhood, peeing in our trash cans, sleeping on our front lawn, and nothing was done. We called the police. The police told us that City Council has told them not to do anything. About 2 years ago, I contacted Council again saying, either they go or we go. Got no response. So we moved out of Portland a year ago. I also own investment property here in Portland. One of them is at 123 Southeast 97th Avenue. I've reported the homelessness around that property for several years, and pretty intensely for the last 6 months. I've been reporting them every week, 2-3 times a week sometimes, for at least 4 months solid. And this camp of 5 to 15 to 20 tents have been there the entire time. They come and go a little bit, but there's always someone there. I've got, then last year, or 2 years ago, we built a new building on that property. It's a beautiful parkour gym. One block, we have like parents that come here with their kids, trying to be healthy, doing the right thing. A block away, we have homeless camp. It's just like this endless stream of drug users. They come on our property, they poop on our property, we find needles on our property, we find people back there camping on our property, they dig through our trash, they put trash all over our property, and there's nothing that is being done. And at what point, are we just fed up? I've actually called a broker. We're going to sell our property over there as well because we're done with this. And this final picture, right in front of our gym, where some homeless guy decided to use the storm drain as a public toilet. So that's what we got to work with. I'm here to, I heard you say earlier that you've asked the police to go ahead and do their job, but they're not. I've talked to them for 5, 6, 7 years. Many officers keep telling me that City Council has told them not to do anything. They tend to believe that.
So let me be crystal clear. And I will make, if you can get your contact information to Michelle right there, we will follow up with you. I put it in writing because I'd heard the same things that you've heard. I have friends, they've called the police, they've heard the same things. And I've been very clear in my roll calls. I've been very clear in my public statements. I've been very clear in press conferences. I give myriads of speeches on what is our strategy around homelessness. And I think we have a pretty good strategy. It just isn't scaled. We're investing in shelter. We're investing in services. We're investing in the transition off the streets into housing. We even got the business community to throw in more of their business licensing taxes to this cause. But I think everybody in this community can agree it's not enough, and that the problem continues to be an issue. There's too many people living outside. There's too many people in the elements, and it's creating a sense of conflict. So it's something I want to address with a sense of urgency. As you can see from the people behind you, there are people who think we're doing too much. So there's not a lot of consensus on this. But I do sense your frustration. I hear it from lots of people, and I'd love to have a follow-up with you.
I'd love that.
And I appreciate your taking the time to come in.
Okay. I would love that, because I did read you have a full color brochure of all the things that you're doing, which is, like you've mentioned, none of it mentions people like me who are trying to run a business, trying to rent property or live in their own homes, and have people, put a cardboard box in your front yard and use it for a toilet. How are we supposed to deal with that?
And we've actually got some good relationships now with the nonprofit, the faith sector, the business sector, and we're working on basic things: more public restrooms, more porta potties, more shower facilities, helping to keep the community clean. We have people in homeless camps who are actually working with us. We hand out trash bags. They do fill them. We go back. We pick them up. So there are partnerships that are developing that are showing some promise. But I do sense your frustration, and I want to acknowledge it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that people saw the article in the Oregonian this past weekend about the decrease in the number of homeless students in Portland Public Schools over the last 2 years. And I'm hopeful that that is an indication, that has been one of our first priorities, is getting families with children into permanent housing. And so the issues didn't start with this mayor. They started many years ago with Ronald Reagan slashing the federal budget for providing housing for people. And Portland can't solve the national crisis by ourselves. If we were to house everybody tomorrow, then we'd get a whole bunch of more people coming. And so we have this strategy, as you acknowledged. And I just hope we stay the course, and we need to address the livability and the criminal activities, such as you point out. But as the mayor said, he has directed the police to address those. But thank you very much for coming in.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And Michelle, can you please get his contact information? Thank you. All right. So I've pulled 1190 and 1191. Has anything else been pulled from the consent agenda?
Nothing else, I'm sorry.
Very good. Please call the roll on the remainder.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish? Aye. Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. 1190, please.
Appoint Brian McCarter to the Portland Design Commission as landscape architect for a term to expire November 20, 2022.
Tim Herron, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian McCarter to my left. He has put forward an appointment to you all to fill the vacant position on the Portland Design Commission, previously held by Commissioner Tad Savinar. Brian is a Portland-based principal, urban designer, and landscape architect for CGF since 1985. He has over 40 years of experience focused on urban design, landscape architecture, planning in the public realm. He brings an extensive background to the design of campuses, neighborhoods, parks, plazas, and streets, as well as major transit and pedestrian facilities in urban settings. He has developed a close working relationship with designers of different disciplines to effectively create a marriage of architecture and engineering in the public realm. For these reasons, we feel that Brian is an exceptional candidate, particularly good fit for a landscape architect position on the Design Commission. If approved, his appointment would begin from today for the next 4 years, maybe longer if he does really well. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. I brought Brian with me today, and if you had any questions, he's ready to go.
I have a couple questions.
Commissioner Fish.
And Brian, thank you for putting your name in the hopper here.
Thank you.
I'm just curious because my sense is that ZGF's footprint is growing pretty dramatically locally and then beyond our boundaries. So how many people work for ZGF locally, roughly?
About 275 in our Portland office.
Wow. And then you have offices in how many other states or cities?
Five other cities, kind of west coast to east coast.
That's terrific. And in the Portland office, do you have a sense of the percentage of work that you do that's here in Oregon versus around the world?
Ooh, that's a very good question. It fluctuates up and down depending on big projects. It could be anywhere from maybe 20% to 40%, depending on if we've got a big, large local project.
Well, it's interesting. I'm next week taking some time off, and I'm going to be down in San Diego. And I mentioned to someone at ZGF that I was going to be at the University of California, San Diego. And of course, the response I got was that ZGF designed many of the buildings in their medical complex. Mm. So the reach of your firm is pretty extraordinary. And again, thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Motion to accept the report.
Oh, I need a motion. Sorry. Thank you.
Move to accept.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Thank you so much for being willing to dedicate us, as you know, a significant amount of time to this. Aye.
Fish?
From the written materials and what we've heard about you, we couldn't ask for a better qualified candidate. So thank you for taking on this assignment at a time when we are deeply committed to raising the bar on design standards for our great city. So thank you, sir. Aye.
Saltzman?
Thank you for your willingness to serve, Mr. McCarter. And I also want to thank Tad Savinar for his many years of good quality service as a Design Commission member. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, Brian, I am thrilled to appoint you to the landscape architect position on the Design Commission. As you heard from the testimony, Mr. McCarter is a very, very experienced urban designer and landscape architect. He's been with ZGF since 1985. According to my notes, over 42 years of experience focused on urban design, landscape architecture, and planning in the public realm. These are exactly the skill sets that we need. He brings extensive background in the design of campuses, neighborhoods, parks, plazas, streets, as well as major transit and pedestrian facilities in urban settings. You have a reputation for working very well with other people and other players in the landscape and design and architectural arena, marrying both architecture and engineering in the public realm. You are going to be an exceptional contributor to our commission. And I'm just sorry that the salary isn't commensurate with the skill set that you're going to be bringing to the table. But we're pleased to have you. Your term will run from November 21st, of course, to November 20th, 2022. Unless, as it was previously said, if you do a great job, we'd love to have you stick around for a little bit longer. So thank you for your willingness to serve. We know there's many ways that you could use these skills, and we're just really thrilled that you're using it for the public good. Thank you. I vote aye. The report's accepted. The appointment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you.
1191, please.
Appoint Andrew Smith to the Portland Historic Landmarks Commission as architect for a term to expire November 20, 2022.
Colleagues, Mr. Smith would like to be here and is not able to be here today, so I'd like to hold this item over until next week, please. Next item, please. We'll go to the regular agenda. 1194, please.
Proclaim November 25th to be International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. According to the UN, United Nations, 1 in 3 women experience violence in their lifetime across all social status, class, race, country, and age groups. For many of these women, social movements such as the hashtag #MeToo and resources as those provided by the Zonta Club of Portland and the Gateway Center have not yet been able to reach them. Today, we stand at a pivotal point. Our awareness of the inequity and violence women all over the world endure across cultures and backgrounds has shown us that when we come together, listen and act, it is possible to challenge the dynamics and systems that have encouraged the discrimination and violence against women and girls. Challenging, at least we are speaking up. We don't always succeed, and that's why proclamations like this one are so important. Thank you, the Zonta Club of Portland, for your work around the world, and also the Gateway Center. And I'll turn it over to our distinguished guests. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor.
Morning.
My name is Anita Marks, and I'm a member of the Zonta Club of Portland. I'm joined here today by fellow club members Helen Garber and Dr. Kelly Scott, our current president. I'd like to briefly tell you a little bit more about our organization's work here locally and why we're asking the city for this proclamation. As you noted, we are a group that is charged with empowering women through service and advocacy locally and globally. Locally, we perform hands-on service activities on behalf of the Salvation Army's West Women and Children's Center, a domestic violence resource in Northwest Portland. We provide informative programs and other events on local, national, and international issues impacting women and girls. We offer access to local and regional scholarships to aid in the education of tomorrow's leaders. And we offer fellowship amongst the women and men who make up our membership. We're one of 6 Zonta clubs in Oregon, all of whom share this common mission. Other clubs are located in Coos Bay, Corvallis, Eugene Springfield, Grants Pass, and Roseburg, and we're all affiliates of Zonta International. Now, Zonta member Helen Garber will tell you more about why it is so essential to recognize November 25th through city proclamation as an important day locally as well as internationally. Helen?
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Portland City Commissioners. My name is Helen Garber, and I'm a member of the Zonta Club of Portland, which was established in 1929. I'm also serve as the United Nations Chair for this region of the Pacific Northwest states, including the Canadian province of British Columbia. We are excited that the City of Portland is considering our proposed proclamation to raise awareness about violence against women locally and globally. I would like to share some sobering thoughts with you. According to the United Nations, some 35 to 70% of women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence. Half of all women homicide victims worldwide were killed by intimate partners or family members. Here at home in Multnomah County, 1 of every 7 women aged 18 to 64 was physically abused by an intimate partner during the past year. Some 21,000 children in Multnomah County were exposed to domestic violence in the last year. It should be noted that young men who witness their fathers using violence against their mothers are significantly more likely to commit intimate partner violence themselves. Another form of sexual violence, primarily impacting women and girls, is human trafficking. And just this past Friday, anti-human trafficking posters went up at 30 highway rest stops in Oregon. This signage was posted by the National Human Trafficking Hotline based on its 2016 record for some 300 calls from within Oregon. That's nearly 1 call per day over a course of the year. Sadly, that number is expected to increase following the installation of these posters. Clearly, despite progress brought by individual efforts and global movements such as the Me Too, Hear Me Too, and Time's Up, violence against women and girls continues to be a pervasive human rights violation and global epidemic. It knows no national or cultural barrier. It takes place at home, in workspace, in open spaces. It impacts millions of women and girls in both peacetime and in conflict. Violence against women and girls threatens countries, inhibits economic progress, and prevents women from contributing to their community and creating better lives for themselves and their families. Please join us and organizations worldwide in raising awareness on November 25th as the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. We respectfully ask the City of Portland to adopt our proposed proclamation. Kelly, and
Hi.
thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
I'm Kelly Scott. I'm the president of Zonta. Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, thank you so much for allowing us to speak today. I also have to thank Trevon Myrie, who got us on the docket within the shorter time frame than usual. I'm really thankful for where women have come. When Zonta was formed in 1919, there would not have been any women on this city council. In fact, women couldn't vote then till 1929. So we have come a long way. We've almost got 50%. But as you heard, there is an awful long way to go. So we personally, as a club, would like to invite any of you who aren't in San Diego on Sunday at 5 o'clock to join us underneath the Morrison Bridge while we turn the bridge orange. Orange is the color designated by the United Nations to symbolize our fight against violence against women, and we would love to have you join us. Thank you.
Thank you.
In addition to the Morrison Bridge, monuments around the world will be turning orange, including the Eiffel Tower, the Sydney Opera House, the CNN Tower in Toronto, Niagara Falls. So all over the world, monuments will be turning orange on Sunday.
And unfortunately, I'll be in California also visiting my daughter. I'm visiting my daughter. So
You're wearing
But
orange,
I've got
though.
my orange on.
You're wearing
And so next week, colleagues, those of us who are here, let's try and remember, because the 25th is kind of in between the two council sessions. Perhaps those of you who have orange ties might be able to sport one. But
That
it's
would
a
be great.
little easier for me. And Mayor, I want to thank you and your staff for getting this proclamation done, particularly faced with the protests that we had last week of the hymn to ridiculousness. It's important that you made space for this on this agenda and got this done so that there's many different ways to protest and to stand up to people who are doing bad things, and this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have to confess, I've never heard of Zonta Club before. Are you a service organization?
Yes, we are.
Classified service organization. Yeah, best kept secret. We're hoping to change that.
It's an NGO, and it also has consultative status with the United Nations.
And is Zonta a name or a?
It's a Sioux Indian word, meaning honest and trustworthy.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good name.
Very good. And with that, I have the honor of reading the proclamation on behalf of the City Council. Whereas the City of Portland is an inclusive community which supports gender equity, which actively seeks through its ordinances and policies to eliminate gender-based violence. And whereas Zonta Club of Portland, in continuous operation in Portland since 1929, works to empower women through service and advocacy, and to eliminate violence against women and girls. And whereas Zonta Club of Portland is a local affiliate of Zonta International, a non-governmental organization, NGO, which acts on behalf of women and girls worldwide, and which has general consultative status with the United Nations in these matters. And whereas since 1999, the United Nations has recognized November 25th as International Day to eliminate violence against women. And whereas Zonta Club of Portland seeks to increase public awareness of the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women on November 25th by lighting Portland's Morrison Bridge orange at dusk on that day. And whereas this bridge lighting is in solidarity with Zontians worldwide, lighting public landmarks orange to recognize this day, including, as was mentioned, Niagara Falls, the Eiffel Tower, and the Sydney Opera House, amongst others. And now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim November 25th, 2018 to be International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this day. We'll suspend the rules.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for Commissioner Fritz for bringing this forward.
Picture?
Why don't we, we'll take those little rails down. We'll meet right here for a photo.
All right. Over here, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Betsy is our unofficial photographer.
1, 2, 3. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Honestly encouraged?
I feel like a Girl Scout.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that. That was good.
Yeah.
$11.95, please, Carla.
Authorize city attorney to sue or join as a party in litigation challenging federal government's refusal to disperse certain statutorily mandated funds to Oregon jurisdictions.
Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Denis Vanier, Senior Deputy City Attorney. The resolution before you today would authorize litigation to secure the city's entitlement to federal Burn Justice Assistance Grant funds, the so-called Burn JAG funds. So I'll provide some background about those JAG funds and some of the litigation that has happened in other jurisdictions about this, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So this litigation would be related to the city's and other jurisdictions' sanctuary status. As the council is aware, 2 years ago when President Trump assumed office, he issued an executive order that directed the Attorney General to deny federal funding to jurisdictions that were deemed to be sanctuary jurisdictions by the federal government. Council authorized our office to litigate to challenge that executive order, and as council is aware, we won that litigation, and the executive order was struck down. And so as a general matter, at this point, the federal government is not generally withholding federal funds from sanctuary jurisdictions. The executive order is no longer in force. However, that is not true for this specific grant, the Burn JAG grant. And it is a grant that actually, this is timely, I was thinking of the previous item. It is a formula grant that is related mainly to human trafficking statistics. So it's what's called a formula grant. The Congress has appropriated money to jurisdictions that meet certain statutorily defined criteria based mostly on crime rate and specifically on rates of human trafficking.
We had a discussion the other day about another formula funded program that we benefit from, which is the HOPWA program, the Housing for People with AIDS, HIV/AIDS, and it's based on a formula, and then we get our annual allocation of $1 million something. Similar thing.
Exactly. And so what it means is, so this particular grant, the Byrne JAG grant, is administered by the U.S. Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice has no discretion to deny or modify grants for grantees that meet the criteria. And so the City of Portland has qualified for the Byrne JAG grant since it was created over 10 years ago. That changed in 2017. So in 2017, the federal government essentially took no action on grant applications for a lot of jurisdictions across the country, including the City of Portland. That action was challenged in numerous courts, and the federal government has uniformly lost. Essentially, the argument of the federal government was that it could tie the Byrne JAG grant to the federal government's interpretation of this federal statute, Section 1373, that the federal government reads as requiring the grantees to cooperate with enforcement of federal immigration laws as a condition of receiving the grants. That was challenged across the country. The federal government has lost all of those lawsuits. The problem is that the federal government has taken the position that it will not, that it will comply to those judgments only to the extent they pertain to the particular parties that challenge that. So, for example, if the City of Portland did not sue the federal government, as a general matter, the federal government would not issue the grant. Their position is, if you sue us, we will give you the money. If you don't, we won't. So for 2017, the City of Portland was entitled to an award of $385,000, approximately a little more than that, dollars. That grant was supposed to be dispersed a year ago. Just 2 months ago, as council is aware, the city finally received an award letter. And that was due to a win by the United States Conference of Mayors in the 7th Circuit. And the court in that circuit issued a preliminary injunction basically ordering the federal government to process the grants and not tie those grants to compliance with federal immigration laws. So we have received the award letters. We're in the process of processing that 2017 grant. However, the federal government is still fighting that 2017 grant, and they're taking the position that they may eventually ask for it to be reimbursed or may require the city to comply or to cooperate with federal immigration laws. And so the only way for the city to secure its entitlement to that congressional grant for 2017 is to file a lawsuit in this case. The situation is slightly different for 2018. So for 2018, the federal government is again saying we want to tie the 2018 grant to cooperation with federal immigration authorities. So exactly the same conditions that they lost on in 2017. And again, the federal government's position is, oh, but those judgments pertain to the 2017 conditions. We can reimpose those in 2018, and if you have a problem with that, you can sue us. So that's what we're going to do in this case. The state of Oregon filed a lawsuit last week, and this resolution would authorize the city to file its own lawsuit or join the state of Oregon in its lawsuit to secure entitlement to Byrne JAG grants. So that's the general background. I'm happy to answer any questions council might have.
It's an excellent presentation. I'm reminded, since this has come up several times in the last year and a half, that the great irony in all this is that while I think we all agree that under the 10th Amendment, the spending clause, the case law about you can't coerce us to do things that are within the federal province. I mean, all the legal arguments go our way and have from the beginning. And the fact that this was originally done by executive order made it even more tenuous. But the part that to me is so stunningly hypocritical is that the very same argument was used in the reverse by states' attorney generals across the country in saying that President Obama could not, in effect, coerce them to participate in the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And the same arguments were used just in the reverse, that
that's correct.
You can't compel us to do this, and we're a sovereign state, and we can't be required to do this mandate and other things. And it's a sign of how resourceful this administration is that that they have completely flipped the argument to try to get at sanctuary states. And by the way, just for people who are watching this, the city of Portland is not actively subverting any efforts of the federal government to enforce federal immigration laws. We just have a sanctuary state law that requires that we're not going to participate in certain actions and that we're precluded from, but that's entirely different than taking any steps to interfere with the lawful enforcement of federal law, which is done through federal agencies. So I think we're on the, from the excellent briefing that I've had in the past from the city attorney's office, I'm convinced that we're not only right on the law, but unfortunately we have to go through this exercise. But it is stunning that the very same arguments were used to prevent people from getting health care and now are being used to justify punishing cities like Portland for following state law. It's breathtaking in sort of the flexible approach to enforcing our law at the federal level. But I assume we're going to win, and thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you. And unless council has any other questions, that concludes my presentation.
Very good. Public testimony.
Yes, we have 3 people signed up: Shedrick Wilkins, Casey Ryan, and Maggie.
I'm Shedrick Wilkins, and I look at the situation about immigration here is that California now has a Democratic governor, which means immigrants can come to California and fan out to Oregon. They're not having a jet plane. They can just go somehow get across the border. I believe this, and this has to do with domestic violence, that Portland needs to have a center where if immigrants come here and people, vigilante types, will beat them up if they're homeless, I think they should go to a central place. Women of domestic violence need to get their children out of their home and go someplace in a center. I believe this center should be the Memorial Coliseum for homeless people, for immigrants who are sleeping and they don't have a place to stay, and women of domestic violence can take their children there. In the Memorial Coliseum, it's a Steve Novick idea. I remember when they were talking about Terminal 1. When it gets batted around about Right to Dream 2, Right to Dream 2 is right across the street now from the Memorial Coliseum. So that seems to be the least resistance to, and I'm tired of this fact that people have talked about the Pearl District shelter. It hasn't been made yet. So that area is a perfect place to start some sort of, when I was homeless in 2011, they had a big giant healthcare event there. It was super. And I think they only use it for like high school graduations, so you could shuffle people around in the Memorial Coliseum so people can graduate and move them around. And there's a big basement in the basement down in the Memorial Coliseum. The best health care is usually done in mass, stuff like that. So if you want to make sure that people can go there, name it after Bud Clark or something, who was in 1989 was Commissioner Fritz mentions Ronald Reagan. Bud Clark and Senator Hatfield in 1989 did a homeless event near Bologna Joe's. And so I believe it's the best use of veterans' property. And one way about the veterans is all of us ended up probably from another country and came here. And I'd say the Memorial Coliseum. It's a Steve Novick idea. I went to a big event there in 2011, and immigrants coming here are going to be vulnerable to being beaten up by, if they're sleeping somewhere. Best in mass for protection.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm for suing the federal government. What I want to know is, will that subpoena be delivered to Trump? I'm asking the city attorney.
We'll have him come up later and answer that question.
Will it be delivered to Trump?
I assume it will be delivered to the Justice Department. Is that correct?
It would be lovely if it was delivered to Trump. Okay, and yes, I think we should support immigrants here because they do a lot of labor and they want to be a part of this country. And my grandfather was an immigrant. So, yeah, they contribute. So,
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity. Now, President Trump, if I might say this directly to you and Homeland Security, since you're listening whenever I mention President Trump's name, let me say this to you. I want you to start being more reasonable with Oregon. Not all the senators are these foul-mouthed senators that don't have any idea how to negotiate to get their grant money. Not all these commissioners and the mayors and the chair are these foul-mouthed people that don't like you. They understand that if you want to get grant money, you have to negotiate in a reasonable manner. Or, as the city attorneys know, as great attorneys that you are, when people want to start playing games with you, guess what? This is what you get. Oh, that lawsuit was for the year before. Hey, guess what? Sue me again. Hey, guess what? Sue me again. Hey, guess what? Have that mayor make some comments about me. Hey, have that senator tell me they don't like me. Well, guess what? You want to be these potty-mouthed, foul-mouthed elected officials, this is what you get. And to the public, we just spend a lot of extra money on these great attorneys of ours. Instead, we should have elected officials say to Mr. Trump, look, we disagree with you on your immigration, but don't cut our money here. We want to work with you on some other issues, but don't cut our money here. Be reasonable to us on our super fund. Send us some money like you did some other states and some other governors that actually got money to deepen their channel, which I wanted to get for the city of Portland. Well, guess what? We're not getting that money. We're not going to have our super fund side cleaned up. We're not getting anything at Oregon, and you know why? Because we have these elected officials that would go to North Korea and get in front of somebody like Mr. Kim and say, guess what? We hate you. Guess what? We think you're disgusting. Guess what? We dislike you. Hey, do you want to be friendly to us? Hey, do we want to work together? And you know what they say back to you? This is what you get, public. This is what you get. We have unreasonable elected officials that have no idea how to negotiate, no idea how to get our grant money, no idea what the President of the United States is and who he is. You don't like this president, and it costs this city a lot of money, a lot of grants, and it's going to cost us a lot more in the future. One of you guys have to go. Any of you need to go, or President Trump, guess what? He's not going anywhere. You want this trouble? Bring it on. Bring it on to President Trump, because he's going to win at the end of the day. Terms and conditions of these grants, guess what? He's going to win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
I just want to observe that this resolution that is very comprehensive, if people want to sort of understand the history of this, the executive order that began all this nonsense was issued on January 25, 2017. Didn't leave a lot of room for negotiating, and we've been sort of reacting to that ever since. But President had the right to issue an executive order, and the states and localities had the right to point out that it was unconstitutional, and that is the essence of our system of checks and balances.
Well said.
Call the roll.
Fritz.
As City Council members, we have a particular responsibility and opportunity to speak out against and stand up to legislation that is harmful to immigrants. We care about immigrants in our community. We elect them to City Council sometimes. I'm happy to support this legislation. Thank you, Denis, for your work on it. And it's just a sad state of affairs when a city has to sue to get what it is entitled to get under the law. Aye.
Showing respect. Fish.
Respectfully, I vote aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, I think we all agree the rule of law is important, and no elected official, not even the President of the United States, is above the law. The grant money that we're seeking here is very important to the state and to the city. The Burn JAG grant has been a critical source of funding for programs that benefit the most marginalized members of our community for many, many years. Courts have ruled clearly that the Trump administration cannot impose illegal conditions on this grant money. Yet, despite those court rulings, the Trump administration continues to impose these illegal conditions. To make matters worse, these illegal conditions are an attempt by the administration to force the city to advance the federal government's poorly considered immigration policies, something we are not compelled to do. The Trump administration cannot use illegal grant conditions to advance faulty immigration policy. We've sued them once, and we'll sue them again. Until the Trump administration follows the rule of law and stops imposing these illegal conditions. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. Next item, if you could read 1196.
Repeal code for single-use plastic checkout bags and polystyrene foam food containers and replace with code prohibitions and restrictions on single-use plastic.
Colleagues, as I mentioned right at the beginning of the council session during my housekeeping, I would like to pull this temporarily till next week. This is at the request of some of our stakeholders. We are in the process of crafting a potential amendment that we will bring back. That being the case, we will hear the amendment and we will ascertain whether there's support for that amendment, and we'll take testimony on that amendment. Assuming the amendment passes, then we would move it on to second reading at that point. But as far as today goes, we'd like to pull the item. Please read number 1197.
Establish the Special Appropriations Committee for fiscal year 2018-19 and outline the review process for awarding one-time special appropriations grants.
Thank you. The Portland City Council approved $765,000 in the adopted budget for the fiscal 2018-2019 year for one-time competitive special appropriation competitive grants. Future councils, of course, will have the opportunity to review and adjust the process to ensure that we're providing organizations with the best opportunity to compete for funding from the City of Portland. The committee will individually review and score each application based on several factors, including, amongst other factors, accountability, sustainability, equity, effectiveness, and others. And then, of course, the Special Appropriations Committee will report their recommendations back to the Council no later than January of 2019. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. For the record, my name is Craig Haynes, and I have the pleasure of working for the Office of Management and Finance Grants Management Division. As the Mayor just mentioned, I'm here to put forward a resolution to establish the Special Appropriations Committee for fiscal year 2019 and outline the review process for awarding one-time competitive special appropriation grants. Well, as you know, the committee is comprised of one representative from each commissioner's office and one from the mayor's office, and these individuals are charged with reviewing and scoring applications that we received under this program and putting forth recommendations for organizations to be awarded funding. And also, as the mayor mentioned, we're hoping to do so by no later than January of 2019. So I'm hoping that the council will approve this resolution to establish the Special Appropriations Committee.
Very good.
I guess the only question I have that I was puzzled by is we already have a Special Appropriations Committee and they've already met twice. So why are we doing the resolution now? It seems out of sequence.
We hoped to do the resolution earlier, but we in the grants division are hoping to come up with a grants tracking system to basically make this process easier. And we are hoping to delay putting forth the resolution until the tracking system was up and running, but due to circumstances beyond our control, that has been delayed. So it's kind of putting the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, whichever way the saying goes. So due to poor timing, that's why we're just coming before council to establish the resolution.
But the effect of adopting this resolution just formalizes a process that's already underway.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
Commissioner Fish, I had the same question, and perhaps when the Chief Financial Officer brings forward her package of financial policies for the city, we could just establish this committee and the rules for it at the same time so that we don't have to do this. Although it would be good to have a resolution during the time when the applications are being taken. The reason that we have this special appropriations process, started by Mayor Hales and continued by Mayor Wheeler, is that previously groups that knew people on the city council or that knew to come and ask could get a special appropriation, and everybody else was kind of out of luck because they didn't show up at the budget time. So it is important for people in the community to know that we have this more objective and fair process, and next year let's try to publicize it while the applications are going. But I obviously support the establishment of the committee. We often form committees without having a council resolution, and so I think we should be able to set that as a precedent moving forward.
I agree, Commissioner Prince.
So, Mr. Haynes,
Yes, sir.
Do you review the reports that organizations that get special appropriations send us about how they're using the money?
Yes, sir. I'm the minister for that. I administrate that program. So, yes, I review the progress reports.
And are we getting progress reports?
We are getting progress reports. Progress reports are tied to invoicing. So if you are submitting a request for reimbursement, it must be accompanied by a progress report.
Okay, great. And we currently don't have a restriction on the frequency of how often an organization can request special appropriations?
Currently, no. That language has been added to FIN 2.04, which is currently on a review, and I was told by the CFO should be coming forward by early next calendar year. So that language will be in FIN 2.04, which will allow restrictions on who can apply and how frequently they can apply.
Great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Public testimony.
No one signed up.
Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you very much for your work. I am glad that we've established this and that Mayor Wheeler has continued it. Aye.
Fish.
Yes, thank you for an excellent report. Aye.
Saltzman.
Thank you. Aye.
You're welcome.
Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. My only regret is there aren't more zeros following the numbers in this particular report. I want to thank Sarah V. Allen from my office, who is my designee to this committee, and she takes it very seriously and reports back that everybody else is as well. And so I'm grateful for all the hard work people are putting into this. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
1198, please.
Authorize limited tax revenue bonds to provide up to $4.6 million to finance technology for the reconstructed Portland building.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Matt Gierach, Debt Manager in the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. This ordinance authorizes a city to utilize line of credit and bond financing to fund the technology improvements of the Portland Building Reconstruction Project. Line of credit financing is already being used to fund a portion of the Portland Building project during the construction phase, and upon authorization, the city's debt management division will amend the existing Portland Building line of credit to include the technology project expenditures. Upon project completion, debt management plans to refinance the line of credit balance with proceeds of a long-term bond issue. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are we doing this slightly out of sequence, again, because of the because we want to take advantage of favorable interest rates now?
This borrowing was never authorized. It was created separately. The borrowings were separated from the purpose. So the previous debt authorizations were just for the building, and we were keeping the technology separate before we got budgetary approval for it.
But beyond that, is the timing of getting the going out to the bond market now versus, say, next year, based on your assumption that we can get better interest rates?
We're going to be using the line of credit balance because we don't know what the with the uncertainty of the project. We use the line of credit balance to address any uncertainty with the actual project amount. Yeah, I think that we just did the bond issue last week for the majority of the reconstruction project, but that excluded this project because this wasn't authorized under the previous borrowing authorization.
And just one other question. I was reading a little bit about last week's bond sale, and are our bonds purchased primarily by institutional investors, or are there mom and pops that also buy Portland bonds because they think they're a good investment and want them in their portfolio?
The majority will be purchased by institutional investors, and institutional investors will also sell the bonds to retail holders that are their customers, but the majority of the bonds are held by institutional investors.
Thank you.
So is this 4.6 million part of the original $195 million budget for the Portland building?
Currently, based on the revised budget for the project, where this will be included in that 195. Previously, it was going to be separate from it from a budget perspective,
okay.
But now we think it can fall within the total 195.
Okay, thanks.
Is there public testimony on this item, Carla?
One person signed up, Maggie?
Oh, and I'm not going to comment because I didn't understand what it was about, and now I understand.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for letting us know. Anything else, colleagues? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you. Next item, 1199, a second reading.
Authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder and provide payment for the construction component of Road 10R MP 28.77-31.85 project in the Bull Run watershed at an estimated cost of $1,540,000.
There has already been a presentation on this item. Public testimony has already been taken. This is a second reading. Any further questions or comments? Please call the roll, Carla.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted, and we are adjourned due to a lack of agenda. There will be no Wednesday afternoon, no 2 p.m. meeting today, and due to Thanksgiving holiday, there will be no Thursday 2 p.m. meeting. We're adjourned.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
First, I just want to say it's the day before Thanksgiving, so I want to wish all my colleagues a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. We like Thanksgiving so much in my family, we do it twice. We go to visit friends on Thursday, and then my wife cooks a Thanksgiving feast on Friday. So my best to each of you, and I won't be here next week. I'm taking the week off, but I'll be thinking of you as you take up the plastic straws and other things. And I look forward to seeing you when we get back from San Diego the following week.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's kind of you. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
We're adjourned.